In this lesson, we taught a lot of new words and concepts, so you may have to help them get their brains around some of these terms. We first talked about rhythm, melody, and harmony. Rhythm being the pulse or beat of the music, melody being the singable notes that move through the music, and harmony being additional notes added to the melody that changes the feel. These are obviously going to be easier to demonstrate for recognition than to just explain, so feel free to have some extra demonstrations of each element of music if they're having trouble understanding. If you have a popular song available, point out the musical elements discussed in the song. Notice the rhythm of the beat. Choruses of songs are typically very melodic and also often have examples of harmony in the vocals, but verses may sometimes be just as melodic and have harmonies layered over too. I'll leave it to you to pick a song that works well with your class. We discussed music notation, starting with staves, staves being the 5 lines we write the music on. We talked about the bars, which divide the staves into measures, and we talked about clefs. The treble clef, which sits on the top stave of the grand staff, and the bass clef, which sits on the bottom stave. The treble, or G clef, circles around the line that represents the G note on the stave, and the bass, or F clef, have dots that are between the F line of the bottom stave of the grand staff. We readdressed the note values and how the notes equal 4 beats in each measure, and how to get that number of beats with different combinations of notes. Be sure this is a familiar concept. We discussed how notes are placed on the staves and how where they are placed determines the pitch and name of each note. We also went over rests. Rests are silences placed in music that have values similar to the notes we've already covered. So we have whole rests that equal 4 beats, half rests that equal 2 beats, quarter rests that equal 1 beat, and eighth rests that last only half a beat. Rests are important because they can help fill up a measure without playing notes all of the time. With our rhythmic exercises, the students will be playing the middle C note with various rests and duration. They may need some help counting while they're playing. Make sure they're always counting their 4 beats per measure and where each note and rest lands on the beats and for how long it's held. Each example is only 3 measures long and it's played with just the thumb, so they should figure this out pretty easily even if it takes a bit of time. During the talent show portion, have each student practice the rhythmic exercises and, as they feel confident, have them perform the pieces for you. The important thing here is they get used to counting in 4 and knowing where to start and stop the notes. Playing at 60 beats per minute shouldn't be tough for them. The practice song for this week is Ode to Joy. This is our first piece of written music, so it's important to make sure they're looking up at the page and not down at their hands. They need to keep their fingers in the C major 5 position for both hands and remember where each note is. A good drill for this is to have them say the note names as they play each finger going up and down on the 5-finger scale. C, D, E, F, G, back down, G, F, E, B, C. You can also call out a note and have them play it with both hands so they get familiar with which fingers play which note names. But again, we don't want them looking down at their hands. We want them to hear the note name and pick it out without looking. Eventually, we'll want them to associate the note on the staff with the note names. But for now, reading the names above the notes is totally fine. This exercise has both hands playing separate parts, so we want them to learn each hand separately first, then put them together. While practicing this piece, reinforce for them to take each section 1 bar at a time. Play that bar until they know it for sure before adding the next bar. We want them to stack the bars, meaning they play 1 bar, then they play 1 and 2, then they play 1, 2, and 3, and so on until they have all the bars under their fingers correctly. They can do this with the left hand, and then finally, both hands together. Bar 1, bars 1 and 2, bars 1, 2, and 3, and on. I recommend they start at 60 beats per minute with this song and eventually move up to 80 beats per minute. 5 beat per minute increases is probably the best way to do this for now. We want to mention practicing at home for at least 15 minutes a day. Ideally, an hour of uninterrupted practice, but for right now that may be a bit much. So as long as they are doing a little bit each day, that will be better than skipping days. Addressing previous lessons, we still want to make sure their form is good. Arms are properly angled with no tension in the shoulder or forearms, sitting up straight, feet on the floor, fingers are properly curled and above the correct keys while they play.